navigating regulatory pathways and market access strategies for MedTech.
In regulatory aspects of market access, good. How many of you have been to the party last night? You are my heroes. But anyway, let's try to make it very interactive. My name is Pilar Fernandez Hermida. I'm the founder of iExpand and EMEA advisor of Greenwich Economic Forum. And it is a pleasure to have this brilliant lineup here today. I like to say that we're a centenarian panel, meaning together we have more than 100 years of experience in market access of regulatory. So we're only going to touch a few aspects. You will hear now about them now. But take advantage of this expertise, grab a coffee, and have a discussion afterwards if there is something that you'd like to clarify. So as a way of introduction, why are we doing this panel? The reality is that market access, how you take a product to market, is not business as usual in MedTech anymore. We feel it. Traditionally, you follow some linear path, like you work a lot on a product, market product fit, iterate, regulate. The market then is waiting for you because the moat was very big. The problem is no more, not always in any case, because there is hybrid solution approach and the product saturation have broken the cycle. And what is the main issue? The main issue is that regulation is becoming more and more complicated because the technology advanced regulations come on top. And then the market is increasingly saturated for my solutions. There is a tsunami of solutions, doing the same for a market that maybe doesn't adopt that. So how can founders break this cycle? And ultimately, which is the gist of this panel, what comes first? The market or the regulation? So without further delay, I really like to welcome this stellar panel, as I said before. We are going to work on that. And as a disclosure, of course, market access is much more than choosing the market or the regulation, but we are going to target that tandem because I think that's where we can give you some interesting insights. So let's start by the first why. Why do you go there? Why do you choose that market? Market sets the tone. And my first question would be for Shai. What are the key questions a founder must ask to choose the right market? Because no matter what you do, you're in the wrong market. It's not going to cut it. And what is the role that today in 2026 regulation plays in that choice?
Hi.
Please tell us who you are as well if you want.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here and again in MedTech World and first time in the UAE. Pleasure to be here also in this panel. Edge is a venture capital firm that invests in companies that are in clinical stage and are on their way to get to market, to do the last clinical trials required for regulatory clearance and commercialization, and eventually launching the product. But we are also a venture studio where we start companies from scratch. And I think to answer your question, I think the most important message is to think about those things as early as possible, even before you have the product. Obviously, the market should dictate what is the product that you build. And in my opinion, regulatory should come second. However, if the regulatory barrier is too high, or the other aspects of market access, like reimbursement and customers' ability to pay, if those barriers are too high, then the product will never be successful. So again, our message to founders, and this is what we try to help them with, is to think about those things as early as possible, understand the pathway, and have the R&D be aligned as much as possible with the easiest path to market access, regulatory and reimbursement.
So market first approach.
Yes, unmet need first.
Yes. So note down market first approach, because it is, I mean, you cannot track back once you spend, all the investment and change the market very easily. Thank you so much. But now we're going to get more into the deep linearity of how you start the journey in a market. And again, I'm going to repeat the obvious that we said before: product, validation, go-to-market. And I'm going to ask Dr. Amel, our winner last night as well. By the way, claps, big applause. No clapping? Come on. I just want to see you are kind of listening, So basically, Dr. Amel, how true is that cadence?
Yeah, just to introduce myself, my name is Amel Havkic. I'm a doctor first and MedTech advisor second. And what I do as a doctor is I diagnose companies on their clinical adoption, why it works and why it doesn't work. And to answer that question, I completely agree. If we should choose regulatory or market validation first, the answer would be yes. So both, ideally, because all of it is pretty much about alignment. We heard in the panel before that there are many things which are opportunity to really be the one to shoot up. And pretty much alignment is what will ultimately bring the adoption of the product, which means that we will have a problem which is solved, the solution is accepted, which on one side brings the commercial side, and regulatory, I would say, is a necessary evil. As a doctor, I am a big fan of it. Obviously, it is protecting patients from all kinds of complications, but it is something which is to be taken into the design of the solution, but not something that should be designed for. Because if we design our solution just to fit regulatory needs, we will miss the market needs, we will miss the practitioner needs. It needs to be taken into account, but it's not the most important. That's why the answer is yes. We should account for all of it, and there's ways to do that. And I think we'll hear a bit more about the regulatory.
Thank you, Dr. Amel. I'll hold it there because I have some comments. But what about you, Edwin? What is your take?
I'm from CS Life Sciences, so we're predominantly a regulatory, quality and clinical consultancy. I wouldn't even say consultancy. I think we're a service provider because we work with a number of startups. I would reckon we've worked with over 100 startups that we've helped take to market. And I would agree that regulatory, yes, is needed, but when we've worked with a number of startups, they've not actually understood the product. They've not understood where they want to go, whether it's actually clinically valid. They've got very good ideas, but how do we actually get them to think can they actually sell this product? I think a lot of startups get hung up and they hear the word regulatory and they go, right, that's the only way we get to market, and it scares them. They have to take a step back and say, right, where are we going in the world? Where will this product be sold? Because that will dictate what happens in the regulatory world, and that's the easy part. Once we know where we're going, and can it be sold, and is there a clinical need? Is the pathway going to be different from the EU, from the US to the Middle East? Do the people who are developing the product understand the clinical need, the flow, and how they're going to actually sell this? Because once they know that, the strategy is easy for regulatory, because then we work that out, because the regulations are getting very similar across the world. The standards are developing. The clinical need and the way we sell the product is key to it. When I win with startups, we don't even talk regulatory. The first question I go is, where do you want to go, and can you sell it, and do you know it, can you actually sell the product? And when they give you a list of all their countries, the first thing I say is, do you know it's the same in every country you're going to sell into? Because if you can't, then you start pulling it back, because it comes down to finance. Because if they're a small startup, they've only got a couple of $1 million to play with, they can't do everything, so they have to be choosy of where they want to go, but then it comes back to how do we get to market from regulatory? Where are the roadblocks coming? Because if you think of Europe, MDR, IVDR, it's a lot slower. The US is probably, a lot of the time, that's the main goal because of the financing. So it's planning with the startup to understand how we get to market. Because regulatory, we can deal with, not a problem.
Yeah.
That's the easy part. Because we can talk to regulators, we can deal from there. But as I say, the key bit is where you want to sell and will it sell?
Thank you, Edwin. So the good news is that we seem to have busted this linearity. The bad news is that obviously market access considerations are a bit more complicated, but maybe we can help you because if I summarize what Shai, Dr. Amel, and Edwin said is that the structure for any founder here in the room to get there, because it's not going to be linear, it's going to be all over the place, like where do you go, why, with what, with whom, and how you make money. And then once you decide that, you choose the market. But now, we mentioned the founders. Let's go to those doing the groundwork, the reason why we're here today, the ones, founding products. Obviously, imagine you choose a market. Dr. Denis, you have come here to the UAE to launch a product. So then from a regulatory perspective, it's still there, of course, because we work in the MedTech world. How do you choose the business suit or the product suit? Because a lot of products these days can be a lot of things from a regulatory perspective. You can be hardware, you can be software as a medical device, you have IVR, what have you. Can you share with us who you are and what's your journey? How do you prioritize one over the other? And then I'll ask you probably about the data. Thank you.
I'm a cardiologist background and researcher. I participated in many clinical trials from like basic science till multi-center trials. And I'm a founder of eMed Support. It's a like clinical decision support system for clinicians. When we are talking about regulatory, what is the purpose of regulatory? It's a safety of end users. And end users in health tech, it's a patient. And when we are talking about patients, first of all, we need to put the question, is it your product safety for patients? And in this question, the regulatory come. For example, for software as a medical device, the main point is sensitive data. It's a personalized data, and how you secure this data processing process during the development. And in UAE, it's a really good place for such products because they are starting to build the ecosystem with Dubai Future Foundation and Dubai Health Authority as a regulator. They open the sandbox with depersonalized data of the patients where you can just show the technical possibility to use your solution. And also you can discuss the regulatory perspective. And after it, you can easily go to the market.
But just to drill a bit more, because I'd like to take just in this road, in your journey, or your learnings as well, because data is playing now a very important role. We had to throw the AI, its regulations are coming, but also there is something like the splinter net. There's different territories with different interpretations of data ownership, etc. From your point of view, you have to prioritize the regulatory pathway because very few companies can afford everything at the same time. Does data regulation trump medical device regulation, other regulations? Can you talk to us a bit more about this?
From this regulation point, it's like very simple because each country has, for example, like US market, they have like FDA, In UAE, we have Emirates Drug Establishment, and there are no the different kind of services for medical device, software as a medical device, or drugs. It's like one category, but still right now they very open. And if when you starting the application for regulatory process, they check individually what is the solution, what they bring for from the safety and efficacy perspective. Yeah, and in this market, I think it will be much easier, even if, for example, Europe market, where MDR, it's like 1 or 2 years to achieve the regulatory pathway.
Thank you. I think Dr. Amel is burning to ask one question or comment.
Yes, I definitely have something to add to this. I'm not sure if I agree with the frame. We put it so tackle these multiple fronts from the beginning is training on the funding. But one thing that we need to keep in mind is that if we don't reach the goal fast enough, we will burn through all of our funding and we'll never reach the goal. So I do think that there is a balance to it that we need to find. So I don't think that we should that we have to prioritize necessarily the regulatory pathways or the commercialization pathways. In fact, I'm a firm believer that both of them should work in alignment, work together to propel the adoption of the solution, because you can have a regulated solution, but that's just the starting point. Someone has to pay for it. The insurances have to pay for it. Someone needs to be involved in the commercialization. So it can break your neck. You get your, it's a commercial trap. You get your regulations, but then cannot go to market. No one pays for it, and then you didn't achieve anything, although you have maybe a brilliant solution. So I would urge everyone to really think about the path of commercialization, their economic viability of their model early on and parallelly to the regulatory.
And this is a very well said. I go back, well.
To follow on from there, when it's early planning, when you're going to numerous countries, it's the clinical trials where you're going to go and the data that you can use in multiple countries. So you can do it once and once right. So you don't have to go back in and do another clinical trial for a different country. So thinking early on when you can, where you're going in the world, what clinical data you're going to need, and is it going to be adopted into that country for reimbursement, for payment, is key, because you're going to do one trial to fit all around is a team approach, and it's needing to plan early on. Again, it'll come down to funding, whether it can be done or not, but early discussions with regulators on the clinical need, but will they accept clinical data from one country, from another country, the demographics, are they all the same, the clinical flow? That's key, because that cuts down the number of the speed to market.
And we're going back, I mean, what I really love about this panel, in case the message didn't come around, the product doesn't go around the world, the product goes around the market. So it's a market-first approach. But still, I insist, when it comes to regulation, you have to choose where to start from. Once you have a thesis about a market, and I'll go back to Shai, because I wanted to also go beyond data regulation or other regulations. There's something called health technology assessments for some product class, clinical evaluation, etc., and you operate in different markets. So from an investor point of view, but also from a market connoisseur, how do you conduct evaluation arbitrage? And by arbitrage, this is my own definition, meaning there are some markets where conformity is easier to pull in other markets if you choose, like it's important for the scale. So can you shed some light and some angle of how you prioritize technologies evaluations per territory or product class, etc., please? Some example would be nice.
Yeah, maybe first a comment about the previous discussion. I think that there is maybe one, when you think about your system as a medical device, at the end of the day, you want it to get to market, and it doesn't really matter what stops you. So if you get stuck because of a regulatory process, or because you have to wait for 2 or 3 years to get a code, you are still stuck. It doesn't really matter. So I think the sentence or the saying of, every chain is as strong as its weakest link this is exactly where it comes to play. However, the one exception is in what you said, Pilar, is on the data side. I think today, especially in the US, you do have a kind of a pathway where you say, well, I'm not really a medical device, I'm more of a wellness approach, and this is a new form of process. And there are some disadvantages to that, to defining your solution as a wellness rather than a medical device. But this could be, let's say, an easier pathway for market access if that's where you want to go. So maybe that's a decision that you can take early on. In terms of health technology assessment, again, I've been in this space for more than 25 years, and really things have changed dramatically. I think years ago, Europe was the first place you would go because CE mark was easier, and there were some early reimbursement pathways, especially in countries like Germany. This has changed, and FDA was seen as the most difficult, unexpected, with a tough reimbursement scheme. This has changed dramatically. It's not like the FDA become easy, but it's become easier and more predictable.
Forward.
Yeah. And also you got all of those kind of pathway for innovative technology like the NTAP or TSET and other pathways that you can utilize if you are smart and you plan ahead. Where I think Europe, right now, I have to say it's still a big mess, both on the regulatory side and on the reimbursement side. You mentioned health technology assessment. It could be very, very different country from country. The market is different. The distribution channels are different. So it is much more challenging. And I think, well, in Europe, they have to think very carefully about how they...
And let's not forget,
how they fix it.
I'm based in Abu Dhabi, and then this region, GCC, every month, the Saudi FDA, the DHA, the DOH, it's a lot of changes that actually are facilitating market access. So the thing is, there is this website, Market Watch. You need to have a Market Watch for anybody of you doing commercialization. I do have my own metrics because things are changing, and then when the wind changes, you change the route as well, because at the end of the day, a founder has to be pragmatic. But this is very, very good tips, from arbitrage. I'm very aware. I cannot read. I'm just not. Okay, 9 minutes we got. But we really like to open the floor then maybe for a couple of questions. But before there, I'd like to ask, and you can choose which who wants to go first. The do's and don'ts. I really love these things. Like Edwin was saying in the call, let's do do's and don'ts of market access and regulatory. You can choose, which one. But Edwin, you could go back on time, like in the song. Tell us, what would you have done differently? Because what you learn in life is to do these shortcuts, these.
I think I've taken it forward now, but go back in time, it's building a team that you can trust, that make decisions, and partnerships with people taking the product to market. The biggest thing I see, and I tell founders that I work with, is we need to build a team that we can trust, but also a team that will make decisions, not give you options. The thing that kills medical device startups is people who don't want to make a decision, and it's like, maybe yes, maybe it's no. We need decisions made to make it move fast. If I was going back in time, it would be, we need a team that we can trust, but that will live together and make decisions, not give them options, because we don't need options. We need to get the market quickly, because options kill companies.
Optionality. Slightly the same question, but the other side, how can any of you give us a tip as to how to shortcut regulation, optimize, the need for regulation to buy time? Maybe Shai, maybe Dr. Maybe Denis, actually,
I can start.
Please.
To be honest, it's one tricky point. You can check the predicate software as a medical device or medical device on the FDA already approved, and easily compare your solution with maybe a little difference in the efficacy perspective, but same safety perspective. It's very easy way to start sales process and develop what you want for the next time. Like it's like very easy to use, and also it very helpful to understand the competitors.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe two kind of unrelated tips. First of all, if you are starting to work on a device, think if it can qualify for what is called a breakthrough designation with the FDA. This is something that can give you a faster process on a regulatory side, and sometimes also advantages on the reimbursement side. So that's, just check if this is possible. The other thing, which is kind of completely unrelated, is to think about an aspect that is sometimes neglected in the early days of development, which is usability. This is something that FDA and other regulatory agencies are looking very, very strongly on. And initially this is a device that is designed by engineers, and they are also the ones that sometimes use it in the first clinical trials. And this could be a little bit neglected in the early days. So think usability and think how to test it, and before when you get closer to a regulatory submission.
But since you mentioned the US market, I mean, of all these new regulations, there's the PMA, for example. Is that really like something that's easier to regulate if you are a platform, or is that a trick that you could give us?
I think the word easy and the PMA doesn't fit in the same sentence. First of all,
give us some actionable tips that you say, okay, I see a backdoor.
But you can make it easier for yourself if you start discussions with FDA early. If you can get the breakthrough designation, there are some kind of shortcuts that you can get, and you can get answers quickly. Try to guess less and get real answers early. And I think today is much more possible than it was, some years ago.
Dr. Amel.
I do have a trick, and I hope no one will start hating me, but
this is a safe environment, don't worry.
Definitely looks like that. I mean, we're in Dubai, I feel safe here, different from where I come from, but specifically when it's about a trick for regulatory, don't avoid regulatory. I advise companies oftentimes to just tweak their use case, their value proposition, their intended purpose, and similar things to avoid being a regulated device in the early days, so that they can already get some traction. Like this, you can already get some real market data. You can see, do you really have a good use case for this? And then it's always easy to tweak, to put that one functionality inside that triggers the regulation, the classification of the device, and then so it ideally already planned, then go into that, because then you already have some traction data, things you can use to really fast track the regulatory process.
And thank you. And just so we are on the same room, I'm also pro-regulation. I mean, you know me, you know that. We are not talking about avoiding regulation, we're talking about buying time before you go with a different suit to the market, because the time is the essence in this sector. We don't always comply by busy timeframes, as you know. So we have to kind of buy conviction in between. Again, speaking of conviction, I'm convinced that we might have maybe one question in the public. Maybe you're proving me wrong, but because we have 2 minutes, would anybody like to ask any question to the panel? Oh my gosh, no? Okay. Okay, no questions? No. So, okay, I have more questions anyway. No problem. So, one question that to finalize, we are going to finalize with the topic of the season, AI. But I want to finalize as well with the essence of this topic. I think in this discussion we realize, I mean, it's a market first, commercialization first approach to the risk. So how is AI impacting MedTech commercialization, including the hardware, the typical, the usual suspects, business models, yeah, and R&D investment? So either of you can answer, you know, is all of you, yeah. Would you like to?
Yes, definitely.
With the
because there's one thing that I'm really trying to convince everyone is to reframe AI in healthcare from artificial intelligence into augmented intelligence. The idea is not to shift decisions because artificial intelligence implies that it is autonomous. But augmented intelligence puts the frame much better into what it actually is supposed to do, and that is really boost our ability to make decisions. And in that note, I know for a fact that there is a possibility to to use AI to get it up to speed, because we were doing it. Our StarMap AI is doing exactly that, where we use AI to be able to brainstorm our possibilities 10x, 20x faster than we used to do before. And AI is a transformative technology, and it will deeply impact everything we do. And we better get used to it and used to live with it, but not be dependent on it when it comes to decisions.
Thank you. And time is the essence. So for my conviction, we just need a few more seconds. We have one question in the room.
One very short question, and it's very targeted to Dr. Amel. What will differentiate winners in market access in the next 5 years? It may seem the future, but the future is actually happening right now.
It's for Dr. Amel. Okay, because I wanted you to.
The winners will get one thing right, and that is the metric of success in healthcare. And the real metric of success in healthcare is clinical adoption, because that is what is necessary to get commercialization. That's the only reason we need regulatory at all. So those who understand that and understand that it's a constellation that needs to get aligned will be the ones who will win.
Yeah. Thank you. And I got discretionary 1 minute, maybe. Can I just go in it? How do you pick winners at the moment? And has AI mess up with your plans? I mean, would you like to end with some sentences as to how you distill this?
Well, I have to say one sentence about AI, maybe not about the process and how things are, are enabled and run faster, which I think is very well known. I think AI in healthcare is super important in addressing one of the major issues, I think, in developing market, but also in developed countries, is the shortage of trained personnel. I think that's a major issue in healthcare. There are more patients, there is an aging population, and you just can't train nurses, physicians, clinicians fast enough, and AI can play a very important role here. So that's one thing about AI. In terms of winners, the number one thing that we are looking at is how much the market really needs your solution. If the market needs it, we'll find a way to go through regulatory, market access, and everything else.
Yeah, I think it should be explainable AI. What does it mean? It means that large language models like OpenAI, Claude, it is an interface to communicate with software as a medical device, as a backend, with multi-agentic systems, transparent. For example, in our solution, we know all version of prompts, and we can check all these problems. That's why the regulation part is very important, because you can show what is like on the back end. And if you use a large language model on only like interface, it's very explainable. And to be honest, it's much easier to communicate with patients, because sometimes we use a lot of jargon as a clinicians, but large language model can explain as a 3-year-old baby.
Thank you.
Winners with AI and regulatory is somebody who's planning, talking to the FDA early, making sure that they get it right, because the regulators are still worried about AI and how AI can go wrong. And you can tell with the directives and the way things are working, the AI, and you still need that intervention of the human. I think what you have to ask yourself is, will AI improve what I'm trying to develop? Because too many people want AI to, because it's a new buzzword. Yes, it will help, but we have to look at it from a regulatory point of view. You need to start planning early, and the amount of data you're going to have is huge. So you need to start planning and making sure you get it right, and that you understand what your AI does, and is it doing it properly?
Thank you so much. I mean, we reached the end of this journey. Just as a conclusion, this was the newspaper tomorrow, MedTech World. Like, I will just put it down, to two thoughts. Are you needed in that market segment business model? And if yes, how do you make money? And regulation will be a compass, a driver, it depends. But think of iteration, but think of not linear iteration with the market as your boss and the adoption as your ultimate goal. But thank you very much. It's been splendid. And big clap. Thank you.